Good morning. I'll call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. All three commissioners are present. Commissioner Fund will lead us in the flag salute.
Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Minutes. We'll get that out in just a minute. Hold on here. Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes of August 26, 2013.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections? Call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved.
Comment? Is there, Gary?
No, I've got no public comments for the BOCC meeting.
Okay. I move that we approve the notice agenda, resolution number 13460 through 13461, items 1 and 2.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are you doing this? No, not the hearing.
Not the hearing.
The notice agenda for the Southwest Washington Fairgrounds Maintenance Shop Project.
I wonder if, Michael, are you awake today? Or
I thought you were going to do the, he's celebrating the,
yeah.
I thought you normally do this first.
We do, but there's no public comment. That's for the other hearing.
Okay.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we can get to that now. As most folks know, that the Cougars defeated...
The lowly Cougars.
The first place in the Pac-12 Cougars as of today were successful in defeating the number 25 in the nation team. I think that's the USC Trojans or something like that. I don't know. But all we can say is...
As long as you're doing that, you might as well give all the good news. UW beat Boise State last week.
They did. They bad. But all we can say is, as we get started, is go Cougs, and I think that says it all. Number one on your agenda, on your notice agenda today, is a call for bids. It's the second call for bids for the Southwest Washington Fairgrounds Maintenance Shop Project. Bids are due to the clerk of the board by 3 p.m. on September 30th, 2013, under resolution number 13-460. They will be opened on Tuesday, October 1st in this office. As the board knows, back in May, we did a bid call for a maintenance shop that's been on the horizon for several years, working with the insurance company and various things, to relocate the maintenance shop, which flooded in 2007 at about the rate of 14 feet. And we're going to relocate it to the north end of the fairgrounds. We put out a bid, as I said, in May, and we received 5 responsive bids. Working with the bidders on that, some issues were discovered in the soil. We had a bid proposal that allowed either for a foundation type building or a pole barn building at that time, which the civil engineer drawings showed. Upon further review, we found that there's some soil issues, and we did some extensive soil sampling and testing that shows a pole barn building is not the most conducive to that site. Therefore, we are doing a second call for bid. We are sharing the soil samples as part of that bid process to be fair to all the contractors. So this is a second call for bids on the maintenance shop at the Southwest Washington Fair.
Morning, Commissioners. Donna Truman, Budget Director. I'm here to provide notice of the second 2013 budget amendment, Resolution 13-461. Notice of public hearing will be published in the East County Journal on September 11th and September 18th, and the hearing will be held here on or before 10 a.m. on September 23rd. The total budget amendment was noticed at a revenue increase of $339,279. Expenditures increased by $1,542,408, which uses a fund balance in the amount of $1,203,129. This budget amendment is still in progress, and at the hearing, we will also discuss all the items that are being added after the noticed amount. Questions?
Any questions? Any questions on the, or comments on the notice agenda? Call for the vote on the notice agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Notice agenda is approved.
Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda, items 3 through 8, Resolution 13462 through 13467.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Gross.
And resolution number 13-462, item number 2, is the approval of warrants and payroll. And the last week, 2 weeks actually, there were 6 special purpose warrants in the amount of $1,124.46. There were 344 regular warrants in the amount of $1,134,044.39 for a total payment of $1,135,168.85. In addition, there were 450 automatic payroll deposits and warrants, 298 warrants against the county for payroll in the amount of $3,425,609.82.
Morning, Danette York, Director of Public Health and Social Services, speaking to item number 4, resolution number 13-463, approving contract amendment number 1 between Reliable Enterprises and Lewis County to extend the duration of the contract. So this is the contract that Lewis County entered into with Reliable Enterprises under the Chemical Dependency Mental Health and Therapeutic Court 0.1% sales tax. They were awarded funds through the sales tax to implement a project it referred to as Magnolia Place, where high utilizers can have permanent housing in this apartment complex. Initially, the contract was entered into for a 1-year period, and it was intended to end at the end of September of 2013, but the advisory board has recommended to the Board of County Commissioners that the contract be extended just through the end of the year and prorated funds be added to the contract for that extension. And this is just for planning purposes so that the all the contracts coming through that sales tax can go on a calendar year basis and all be at the same time.
And the funds are all sufficient to do this. We have plenty of money in that account to take care of this, right?
We do, yes. Any other questions? Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Archie Smith with Lewis County Human Resources. I am here to present item number 5, resolution number 13-464, approving a collective bargaining agreement between Teamsters and Lewis County, representing the supervisors group. This is a 2-year deal dating from January 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2014. The financial changes that are in this contract that exist are effective July 1st, 2013. There's a 1.5% adjustment to the base wage. Effective also July 1st, 2013, their employer insurance contribution goes from $865.88 to $900 per employee per month. And then effective January 1st, 2014, it goes up to $950 per employee per month. And there's clarification of the CDL language and reimbursement. And that was it.
Item number 6 on your agenda is resolution number 13-465, which is a bid award for architectural and engineering services for the Area 7 Road Shop project. In March of this year, we had a significant fire at our Area 7 shop, which destroyed it. Since then, we have demoed the building and stuff and entered into an RFQ for architectural studies to build a new shop. Those studies resulted in a selection of a firm called Rick Driftmeyer and Associates in Bellevue. Under the RFQ, it allows us to go into negotiations with that company for services. Unfortunately, we were not able to come to a resolution on a contract. Simply, we were miles apart in the dollars. Therefore, we selected the second company, which is Barentine Bates and Lee, or as we referred to as BBL. BBL has done a lot of work for us in the past. They have done the facilities project, the corner evidence building, the juvenile remodel and stuff. And we brought them in, and they were immediately able to come to an agreement with us on a contract that is, the difference is $435,000 compared to $77,493, I think, so you can see the significance. Therefore, this resolution authorizes the Director of Central Services to enter into a contract with Barentine Bates and Lee for architectural studies at the Area 7 shops.
Now, Michael, does this also include the final drawings and plans for
This will include everything. We're actually having Doug Pruitt, one of the principals at Barentine Bates and Lee, has been up 2 different times and met with us, went to Area 7, has been to Area 5 and looked at that, is working on the planning designs now. We're hoping to have drawings this week. It also includes his presentation for the SEPA work and everything, so it's, I don't want to call it a turnkey because staff does have work to do with it, but it is very comprehensive.
Good morning, Paulette Young, Lewis County Risk and Safety Administrator, here to talk to you about items 7 and 8 on your agenda. Resolution number 13-466, designating the county individual to receive claims upon Lewis County. This is just a housekeeping issue. About 3.5 years ago, the title was changed from Risk Manager to Risk and Safety Administrator, so we're just bringing this resolution current to show the Risk and Safety Administrator is that designated individual. Item number 8, resolution number 13-467, in the matter of continuing relationships with the Washington County's risk pool and the related appointments and designations of or for each member county. This is just another housekeeping issue. We have named Tawny Shepard as the safety officer instead of myself, and we've also added Michael Strozik in as the second alternate director.
What is second alternate director of what?
For Lewis County.
He's already a director, so now he's a director.
But this is for the risk pool, different director. Commissioner Gross is our director. I'm the first alternate director, which means they have the vote for the risk pool.
This is director for the risk pool board.
Yes. So Michael could go in and vote if Commissioner Gross or I was not available to do so.
not or, and.
And.
He changed it to include 8. He said 7, and then he added 1.
I did. I did indeed.
Are there any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. The next thing we will do is a hearing on ordinance 1245, amending the Lewis County Code 1535, flood damage prevention. The way we'll run this is we'll start out with a staff report, followed by a question and answer period. First, the board can ask questions, then the audience can ask questions. After that, we will close the question and answer period, and we will have a time to make statements for public testimony. After that, we will consider the changes to the ordinance. Are there any questions? Director Lee Napier, you're up.
Good morning. Lee Napier, Director of Community Development for Lewis County. I'll begin the presentation. So before you today is the beginning of the hearing process. We would like the board to consider proposed changes to Title 15.35 Flood Damage Prevention. Prior to today's meeting, the board was mailed a packet or distributed a packet which include the draft resolution, the draft ordinance, and a copy of the Planning Commission's report and attachments, which outline the considerations by the Planning Commission that was made by staff. And with that, I'll turn it over to Stan May, our senior planner, to talk about the process.
Morning, Commissioners. Basically, what we have is,
You need to pull it closer.
how's that?
That's better.
Okay. Basically, what we have is another more or less housekeeping update for the most part on this. Back in August of 2011, FEMA's Region 10 conducted a community assistance visit. From that visit, they made specific recommendations for changes to the flood damage prevention program to be consistent with state and federal regulations. Originally, staff had included a proposal to raise the freeboard from 1 foot to 3 foot. After the Planning Commission held 3 workshops and 2 public hearings, they dropped that proposal. And the Planning Commission felt that the discussions about the increase in freeboard were very valuable and productive, and they may revisit it again in the future. The remaining code changes, what was left outside of that, they're all procedural rather than substantive. Most of the changes are minor edits requested by FEMA. The Planning Commission did add a definition and a clarification. And then one change was proposed by staff for consistency with the Lewis County Building Code. This was the freeboard requirement for utility services to be 1 foot above. It's something that's already implemented based on the building code, and it's already in place and already being followed by developers. The SEPA comment period for this ordinance, proposed ordinance, expires on the 17th of September, and but it has been entered into the SEPA registry. Questions?
Any questions from the board?
Yes, about how many people were commenting on this? Did we get a lot of public comment?
We had a public hearing in Randall and a public hearing here. And in Randall, there were somewhere approximating 75 people attending, and there were many, many comments there. I don't know the exact number. And then here, we also had a number of comments, and then there was written comments submitted. We had a lot of input on this, and that was part of what I suspect was part of what drove the decision to drop the 3 foot proposal, because that's where almost all of the comments were.
Now, just to clarify that 3 foot proposal, we have the baseline, the BSE?
BFE.
Is that the abbreviation, the acronym?
BF, yeah.
BFE.
BFE, baseline flood elevation.
Yeah.
So that's where the baseline for where they think flooding will be. And we currently have a 1 foot requirement above that.
Correct.
And for any public buildings or important public service buildings, it's 3 foot above that. Isn't that the current requirement?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
So the current one says, we need you to build 1 foot above the baseline flood elevation, and any county building, anything we do will be, at least it's required in the ordinance to be 3 feet above that. So police stations, fire stations, county buildings, anything, hospitals would have to be at least 3 foot above the baseline.
Correct.
And that's already in this current ordinance.
Yes.
And so what you were considering is requiring everybody to be 3 foot above.
Correct.
Okay.
And Stan, my understanding was that this was somewhat in conflict with the 2 larger cities in the county, is that correct? If we had gone to the 3 foot?
As far as I know, they do not have this regulation in place.
That's correct. That was one of the comments that we heard in Randall. We were asked to look to see if we were adopting a higher regulatory standard than the other jurisdictions, and if so, we were asked to explain why. Getting back to your question about critical facilities is how, when you're talking about public facilities, they're referred to as critical facilities in our code, and on page 19 of the ordinance under critical facilities, new construction of critical facilities is permitted within the 100-year frequency floodplain, but they have the lowest floor elevated to 3 feet or more, so you were correct in your assumption. One of the other considerations that in talking with the Planning Commission and listening to the public and this higher regulatory standard, there's also a consideration by the Flood Authority to look at basin-wide, so Chehalis basin-wide floodplain standards. They are currently preparing a document to put out to bid to try and identify a consultant who will look at standardizing across the Chehalis Basin, which would come into Lewis County too, some standardization of floodplain ordinance. And that seemed like, I think the Planning Commission appreciated the chance to talk about this, but in light of that upcoming activity, felt it was better put off to them.
So part of the problem here is that we have a one-size-fits-all ordinance, and I know that the people in the east end of the county didn't feel like we should be governed by the flood legislation that's being enforced in the western part of the county, particularly the Chehalis Basin. And so that was part of the issue that I know was discussed up in the Randall meeting, that they don't like the concept of it being a one-size-fits-all legislation. We've got entirely too much of that in the state of Washington, in my opinion. So are we going to be able to do that? Can we do that with an ordinance by saying that this applies to the Chehalis Basin, if indeed the Flood Authority comes up with that recommendation, or must we make this countywide?
During our process, no, we were only able to make a countywide consideration. But I think that's something that the Chehalis Basin Work Group can certainly look at and explore whether or not there is an option to do something different.
So yeah, my question would be, can we write an ordinance, would we be able to write an ordinance that would cover two separate parts of the county with two different regulations?
We'll put that in as a consideration to explore that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the audience have any questions? Please come up to the mic, state your name, and ask the question.
I'm Ron Averill, Centralia area citizen. I believe I heard a comment made that the SEPA is not closing till the 17th of September. So if that's the case, how would we approve something today, given the fact that there could be something in the SEPA that would require changes?
We're not approving today.
Lee, do you want to answer that?
Yes. Today we'll present our report, we'll entertain questions, and then move on to public comment for those who have taken time today to come speak. So their public comment is welcome, and then we will hold off a decision until the 23rd, which is the next board meeting.
Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? Then I will close the question and answer period and ask Director Napier, would you like your comments to be added into the record?
Please enter my comments into the record.
Does anybody have any statements? Does the board have any comments, statements?
I might make just a quick mention. As was noted earlier, the meeting held in Randall was very lively and very well attended. There's a growing concern about property rights, individual property rights, and what the rights the people have with regard to their property. And one of the issues that comes up repeatedly, and did come up repeatedly, was property value of an individual's home and what would have to be done with that home if they tried to sell it, an existing place in the floodplain today that is perhaps not 3 feet above BFE. And a very large and very real concern, I think, that people have had floods of record that have never been flooded, and now all of a sudden, because they're in a floodplain, they have to be required to be 3 feet above floodplain. And that message was heard loud and clear by the Planning Commission, and that there's a concern was that, you look, if we do adopt an ordinance that adopts a 3-foot above BFE, then I may have trouble selling my house if it's not. And it detracts from the value of my home, even though I've never experienced a flood of any kind. And so that's a consideration that we took in, and I think the Planning Commission heard that message very well. So with that having been said, Commissioner Schulte, I'm done.
May I correct before you move on? Please enter all staff comments into the record.
So for the statements, the first one is Ron Averill.
Ron Averill, 2523 Graff Road, just outside the city limits of the city of Centralia in the county. This is a very difficult ordinance to consider because of the impacts on any number of areas. Also the fact that there isn't an agreement on what BFE is in some areas. We have FEMA maps out that are recommending substantial changes, which the county's been fighting. And so I can understand the desire to not force on the public a requirement to raise up to 3 feet above a BFE when we don't know what it is. I know that there are areas in the county where we've got pretty good records of what the BFE is, and they could cause substantial problems. There are other areas where we were talking about raising buildings up 12 feet above because of a 500-year storm, and it just didn't make any sense to do that, and we've had to work with those types of things in the past. But you have to also recognize that we've got a river which is constantly coming up because alluvium gets brought down the river. I know that Julie Bomelli Powell's family raised their house 1 foot above the BFE in 1996, and in 2007 the floodwater came within 3 inches of the top of the building at that time. I would suggest that the building department, when they're giving recommendations to people who are building houses, that they suggest to them in areas where we know there's a possibility of flooding going up, that they might want to look at a 3-foot standard, not forced on them, but they might want to look at it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gene Butler.
Indeed, Mr. Averill, and that was one of the areas of recommendation that I think the Planning Commission gave to staff also, that
Yes.
they would highly recommend in those areas that a 3-foot above BFE would be observed.
Eugene Butler for the record. I've reviewed your proposed ordinance. I recommend that you reject this proposal. I believe that there are two major issues that I see with this particular ordinance. The first one is that you're adopting the 1981 flood map, and that's clearly out of date. And although there may be problems with the proposal, the FEMA proposal that's much more current, it's also much more closely allied with reality than the 81 flood map. And second issue is the freeboard issue. I believe that's been fairly well discussed. I didn't realize that there was a difference between public buildings and non-public buildings. I didn't see anything in this ordinance that says that public buildings are required to have a 3-foot freeboard. If it's there, I certainly missed it. But it would seem to me that the 3-foot freeboard is a very prudent thing to do. We have a number of floods that have occurred 96 was one, 2007 was another, and '07 was particularly devastating because partly due to the actions of man-made problems from clear-cut logging that left slash that deposited in a log jam that then released and let a large flow of water forward, and exceeded the 1 foot freeboard issue. So as a matter of prudence, it seems to me that the 3 foot freeboard issue for new construction is an essential. I recognize that we can't go back and ex post facto enforce people who already have built in the floodplain to raise their buildings. But if they have to reconstruct, then that's a time when those things can be done, and it should be done, and the ordinance should require it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Butler, the term was not public buildings, Lee Napier. What was that term? Critical buildings? Critical facilities. Police stations, fire stations, they are already required by code to have a 3 foot freeboard.
But apparently not by this code,
Yes, it is by this code.
because I couldn't see anything
called-
about 3 feet in this code.
If you look to page 19 under critical facilities, you will not see underlined text. It was existing text. Page 19 of the ordinance.
Could you sometime show me chapter and verse on that?
15.35.300.
So I'm happy to stay after and talk with you, Mr. Butler.
Yeah. Thank you.
3 or more feet, it's right there.
Mr. Eric Jensen, Master Builders.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'd like to read this letter and offer it into record. As president of the Lewis County chapter of the Olympia Master Builders, I would like to compliment Lewis County staff for the thorough job they've done to inform the home building industry of the proposed changes of Lewis County Code 15.35 flood damage prevention. Both Lee Napier and Fred Chapman attended our April 17th meeting to give us detailed information about the proposed changes of this code. Based on the discussion at the meeting, we believe the concerns of our industry have been adequately addressed. We appreciate the excellent working relationship we have both with Lewis County elected officials and staff, and we appreciate the proactive approach you all exhibited when communicating with our industry. Please know that you are welcome to attend any of our monthly meetings at any time and keep us updated on what's going on here in Lewis County. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Mr. Scott Nolan.
Scott Nolan, 560 Towser Road, Chehalis, Vice President of Olympia Master Builders and also General Manager of MDK Construction. And that was impressive, Eric. Thank you. Anyway, we want to support the adoption of the flood ordinance as presented. We've talked with you before and with Lee and Fred. We're not interested in any additional regulations. There's a zillion already on board. We want to protect and support our community. Like Lee mentioned, I don't think there's one key that's going to fit all the locks on this thing. You guys have your hands full with trying to make a choice, what happens down here or what happens up there or whatever. So the concept of the retention dam, I don't know if that's something that you guys are strongly considering, but that seems like something that would really take care of a majority of your problems, and we would support that. I had a question, after the SEPA comes out, are we going to have another public comment period, or is this?
There will be another public hearing, which is the commissioners' hearing, on that Monday morning. What's the date? The 23rd?
And SEPA?
And we will bring up the ordinance and the resolution then, and you can come in again that day after the SEPA period closes and make comments again.
Okay.
And we will make a decision on that day.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Any questions from us?
Thank you for coming.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other comments on the ordinance 1245? I have one statement. I strongly encourage, and this board requires of county buildings and any other critical buildings, that you put it at 3 feet above the base flood elevation. The argument to raise it farther than that for both basins in Lewis County creates some problems because the conditions are different. I encourage the 3 feet, but if you look at that, the discounts offered by FEMA are at risk. If you go to the FEMA flood website, what they tell you there is they are going to discontinue all grandfathered exceptions. And so if you would raise your building to get a lower insurance rate, the problem with that is they will most likely discontinue that discount. So while I encourage it, I'm reluctant to require that as a one single solution to all the flood basins in Lewis County. So your comments and your participation in this process are much appreciated. Are there any other comments?
I just was going to say, if there's other citizens that want to make comments, once again, we've said, as our chairman had said, that on the 23rd, if people want to speak to this issue, they can during our regular meeting.
With no other comments, we will close this hearing, and we will consider the ordinance on the 23rd.
I believe you're adjourning the hearing because you're going to take further public.
Adjourning the hearing.
So we'll adjourn until the 23rd to
Until the
allow for
23rd.
additional public comments.
We'll adjourn the hearing.
Okay. Well, seeing no further business on our agenda, Mr. Chair, I suggest we adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.